Hi guys, I hope you are doing okay. Today I'm going to be talking you through 10 reasons why I hated the Cursebreaker Trilogy. Okay, so that might be a little bit clickbaity. I didn't actually hate the Cursebreaker Trilogy. I actually gave all of them a 4-star. I actually really enjoyed my time reading all of them. I will link the video where I read them up above, so please make sure to check that out. But whilst I was reading the books, there were certain things that I absolutely despised and it really ruined my enjoyment of reading. So they are the things I want to talk to you about today. Just to let you all know, there is going to be spoilers for A Curse So Dark and Lonely, A Heart So Fierce and Broken, and A Vow So Bold and Deadly in this. So if you have not read any of those books, please make sure you do not watch this video. Put it in the watch later, read the books and come back to me eventually. That'd be great. But if you have read them, let's proceed to talk about the things I hated. For starters, the first thing I want to talk about is from A Curse So Dark and Lonely. Book 1 was a literal carbon copy of Beauty and the Beast. I know the book is a retelling, I know it's what we should be expecting, but usually when you do retellings, there is something that is very unique and makes the book quite different. There is something that makes the book unique to itself and just kind of takes inspiration from the source material as opposed to directly copies it. In A Curse So Dark and Lonely, nothing was different other than names and the fact that they were not talking inanimate objects. It was essentially a girl gets kidnapped and is held prisoner in a castle. The guy wants her to fall in love with him, but doesn't actually tell the girl that. The girl decides she wants to escape and she wants to leave. The guy is pretty much a douchebag all the way through, and then at the end, she somehow falls in love with him, and the curse is broken. There was nothing new. There was nothing that made the book unique. When I say it's a carbon copy, it's not literally Beauty and the Beast, but there was nothing that made this book so extremely unique. There was nothing at all. I was hoping there'd be things, but they were not. There was one thing that actually made the story a little bit unique, but I had an issue with that, and I'll be telling you that a little later on. My next issue is book 2, which is A Heart So Fierce and Broken, could have been a novella. This is a lot of people's favourite book, and trust me, I actually really enjoyed my read of it. However, in terms of objective, important information that we needed to go into book 3, you didn't need that entire book. Introduce Gray to Taicho. Learn more about the fact that Gray was the heir. Introduce Gray to Isak. Gray and Liamara meet. Gray challenges Ren to a final battle. Those 5 things are the only important things that happen in this story. And they did not need to be told over 400 pages. Those 5 things could have actually been told in 150. It could have been a very short book. The majority of the book was just people travelling from one place to another and then back and then back and then back and then back and basically just stopping every now and again. There was nothing great about the book. It was a fun time, but it could have just been a novella. A lot of people will disagree, but that is my truth. Thirdly, book 3 was incredibly predictable. So much so, I actually predicted how it would end very early on in book 1. And I knew where it was going to go. The second I got to the end of book 1, I knew what was going to happen. I knew how it was going to go. And then throughout book 2, I knew again and again and again, and it just became obvious. I knew, and in this video that I linked above, you will see me say, I predict that this book is going to end with Gray and Ren going into this battle. They will be against each other, and then suddenly they will stop being against each other. They will join forces because they realise that together they can defeat Lilith. And then they'll defeat Lilith and live happily ever after. And that's exactly how it went. They literally did that. They didn't even... It was predictable. As soon as we found out that Gray was the lost heir, I knew that this book was going to end with them two battling each other and not actually battling each other because they will join forces because that's how it has to happen in a YA. Fourth thing I absolutely despised was the fact that Ren was unlikable. There was not one redeeming quality about him. In book 1, he was an absolute douche, and while I hated it, I had to admit it was fair enough because it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. He was going to be a douche and eventually you are going to fall in love with him. That is how it works. However, Ren did not redeem himself in any way, shape or form. He continued to be a douche, and I actually really disliked him in book 1. Then in book 2, he was worse. I don't understand how that worked, but in book 2, he became worse. He became horrible, he became cruel, he tortured Gray and Taicho for absolutely no reason. He just tortured them because he wanted to show that he was a powerful leader, which there was no justification for doing that. He did it just because he was a bit of a douchebag. And then this continued again into book 3. And I think we're meant to believe that Ren had this terrifying experience of magic. He was experiencing PTSD from his events in book 1. But that is not a justification to make him horrible like he was. He is never justified to actually physically torture and abuse someone, as well as treat people so horribly just because he was scared of what magic could do to him. Especially when it was someone like Gray, who has been with him all the way through it. He knows that Gray would not do anything to him. And then he goes and does that just to show that he's more powerful than Gray, because he wants to run the country and he doesn't want Gray to take it from him. Ren is not a likeable character. He is horrible. And I was actually hoping that the story was going to continue to make us hate him, because that's how it worked in my head. Ren was going to become a villain. That's how I pictured it. Ren was the villain of the story. We originally disliked him. We would continue to dislike him. Harper would end up in a relationship with Gray. Ren would be the bad guy. And in the end, Ren would die. That is how I pictured this entire trilogy going once I started reading book 1. No, by the end, Ren and Harper lived happily ever after. By the end, Ren and Gray had a bit of a decent relationship. But Ren did nothing to actually deserve this. So maybe it was just bad writing because Bridget Kemmerer wants us to love Ren and she just did not do it well. Maybe she just hoped that because he was the protagonist of the story, we'd love him. But I did not, and I absolutely despised his character throughout, and the fact that he didn't get made into a villain really disappointed me because he was still horrible by the end. And having him and Harper's relationship be so important to this story, but do nothing to make us like him, bothered me. Another thing that absolutely grated on my nerves, and this was primarily in book 3, I think, Liamara was not fit to run a country. So at the end of book 2, Liamara kills her mother and becomes the queen, because it was her rightful title. However, Liamara is a very weak-willed character. She is very much all for peace and unity and showing love rather than making people fear her. She wants respect rather than fear, which are excellent qualities. However, she was way too much on the other end of that spectrum. Instead of actually having people respect her, they didn't respect her because she was too much of a pushover. And she was not fit to run the country. She had someone spit in her face. She is the queen, and she had someone literally spit in her face and was willing to let them walk away. I mean, granted, to be fair, the person did end up getting the hand chopped off, but that was because her sister stepped in. And whilst I didn't really like her sister, I do feel as though she would have run the country better, because I think in order to run a country, you need to have that kindness and that care for your people, but you also need to be able to take charge. And Liamara was just very insecure and very uncertain of herself, and she didn't go through any sort of character development to deserve that. The biggest act of bravery we got from her was her killing her mother. And in the end, that's all we got. When we got to book 3, she was still this character that was like, I can't do this, I don't want to hurt this person, I'm worried about this, I'm constantly feeling this. And that is not an effective way to run the country. And by the end of the book, we're meant to believe that she still ran this country because she was doing a really good job. No, she was not doing a good job. She was horrible. Another thing that absolutely drove me insane from book 2 was that Harper's personality did a full 180. It was horrible. In book 1, Harper is this badass, strong-willed, independent character that needs no one. She is very much able to take care of herself because that's what she is like. She is a very strong feminist character. She has a disability, but she's never let it define her. She's never let other people tell her how to live because of it. She's never let anyone tell her anything because she is that girl. In book 2, granted, she wasn't really a main character, but this did continue into book 3 a little bit. In book 2, she just became a person that stood behind Ren going, Yes, Ren. I understand, Ren. I'm with Ren. I can't say anything against him. And that was not the Harper we knew and loved in book one. So when this happened, this angered me because I thought she deserved to be such a badass character. When Ren was doing this stuff, when Ren was whipping Gray and Taicho, she would have stepped in. Instead, she waited until everyone was unconscious and then got them to safety. Harper would not be like that. Harper would be the one to challenge Ren and say, what the hell are you doing? And she didn't. She just sat there idly by while he went and carried on doing that. And it really frustrated me because that was not the character that we were meant to fall in love with in book one, and she just changed entirely. In book three, we got to see a bit more of a resolution from that. She became this character that we'd known and loved because she had a bit of hatred and resentment towards Ren, and she showed that. She didn't want to be near him. She didn't want to touch him. She didn't want him to talk to her. That, I thought, great, we're seeing more of that. However, still, by the end, she was very much in Ren's palm again. And she lost all of that character development that I saw in book one that I loved her for. Number 7, which is actually the thing that annoys me the most. It frustrates the hell out of me. What was the point of Harper being from DC? Harper is from Washington, DC. It's very much established that because of magic, Gray can go from the magical kingdom world to Washington, DC in the USA. He can somehow do that. Despite the fact they're different worlds, he can travel to a new world to kidnap women. And I thought, great. When I started reading this story, I was loving it because I thought, oh, they're going to go from the kingdom to DC and then the DC to the kingdom. There's going to be battles in DC. You know, I was getting like full Enchanted vibes where like these royal people are going to end up in DC and having big fights. There was going to be like a big battle with Lilith, final battle, Ren's monster would go through to DC. You know, I expected all of that and I was fully on board for it because there's nothing more I love than magic in a real world setting because I love seeing how it impacts stuff. I was on board. However, Harper comes home from DC. In the first book, she ends up going back to DC to say goodbye to her mum, who then dies, and then brings her brother back to the actual world with him. That is never mentioned again. Well, it is. It's mentioned throughout, but they never go back to DC. The fact that she is from DC is never mentioned. Basically, DC was brought into this story so that Harper could be from a fictional land and pretend that she had resources, because it had to be a land that the people of her country did not know of. They had to have never heard of it before. However, she could have just been from a country on the other end of the world. She could have just been from a country from a long way away. They could have just made something up because they don't have phones. They don't have anything like that. That's not the type of stuff they have. They're medieval. They don't even have working toilets. Like, they could have done anything. They didn't have to bring in this real world Washington DC element, but they did, and they didn't utilize it at all. And it really frustrated me because I expected so much more. I expected such a good plot, and I didn't get that. And it annoyed me so much because I really wanted the story to just go back to DC. I was hoping book 3, after I'd been let down by the end of book 1 and book 2, I was hoping book 3 would finally do it, and it just didn't. It was pointless. Realistically, if we took out DC, nothing would be different. Harper would be from a different country. Take out DC, pretend Harper is from a random city that no one's heard of because they don't have phones, they don't have Google, they can't just check whether it's a real place. Harper gets kidnapped from this fake country, comes here, pretends she has reinforcements over there. She could have saved them. That's how the story went down. Reinforcements didn't have to be real. She could have just been a slave girl from the other country. She could have been a poor farmer's girl. I don't know. She didn't have to be someone from royalty. She weren't someone from royalty anyway. What would be different in the story? Absolutely nothing, because they never referenced it again. The only thing that would have been different in the story is my next point. Noah was a doctor. Noah disappeared from DC. Noah is a person who is very, very well respected and well liked in Emberfall because he was a doctor in DC, which means he knows how to heal people very, very well. He is known as a healer in Emberfall, but because he can do so much, because he knows about medicine, he knows about how to care for people, that is important. And that's a very good reference to DC that they really could have utilised more. It could have been brought into the story more. But the main thing that annoyed me is the fact that Noah disappeared from Washington, DC. Granted, Jake also disappeared from Washington, DC, and Harper, but Harper and Jake had no family. It was very much referenced that the only family they had was each other and their mother. Their mother died. Harper and Jake disappeared. No one probably would miss them. Noah, who is Jake's boyfriend, got taken with them. Did Noah not have family? Did Noah's work not ring up and be like, yo, where are you? His work were missing. He was a doctor. He was missing from work. He trained for years, by the way, to actually get a doctor's job and then just disappeared. And surely he would have had family. Surely his work would have rang him when they couldn't get through to him. I don't know what the policy is, but maybe they'd have rang his parents and been like, hi, just checking why the hell your kid's not here. Is something wrong? Is something problematic? Like, I don't know how work works, but if someone who works for me, especially doing a doctor's job, did not turn up, I would ring their emergency contact and say, has something happened, because we should know. And his parents did not think to find out where their son has disappeared to, because none of that ever got referenced. Noah was just more than happy to be sat living in this new Emberfall world. I mean, he wasn't. All he wanted was to go home, but he never got to go home. So what happened? And that frustrates me the most. That is the only reason that actually justifies DC, because of Noah. But they didn't really do Noah well, because it's not mentioned why he's just disappeared. Okay, one more point was that everyone died until they didn't. We were led to believe that Lilith came in and killed everyone. It was a really dramatic scene. It was the tensest moment of my life when I was reading that scene. Lilith went from room to room and slaughtered everybody. Ren didn't even have enough power to go and find people. He was just injured himself. It was a dramatic, terrifying moment. You know, Harper's handmaiden Freya and her children were murdered. Harper's bodyguard was murdered. Everything happened. And then at the end of the book, they all came back. Because they didn't die. They just conveniently weren't in the castle at the time. And then Harper's bodyguard, is her name Zoe? It was a while since I read the book, to be fair. But Zoe, is it? Harper's bodyguard, swordsman lady, her. She got taken off the back of the horse. Harper and her were riding away to safety, and something swooped down and dragged her off and took her away. But she was absolutely fine, because it just put her down about 10 minutes later. They put us through all of that dramatic moment, through this final book where you can kill anyone and everyone, because what can we do? It's the last book. Just to have none of it really have happened. It was just such a letdown, and I was really upset with how that went. It really angered me, and it just made me think, okay, you've just proven no one's going to die in this story. Like, that is all I felt, and I was really bothered by it. The final thing that really bothered me is that the ending of the book wrapped up in 9 pages. Trust me, I counted. I originally wrote down that it ended in about 15 to 20, and then I went back and counted so I could have an exact number. It was 9. And the thing that really annoyed me the most with it is the fact that this entire story, all we know from book 2 and book 3 is that it's leading up to this big battle. It's leading up to this big war between Ren and Gray. One of them is going to come out on top. One of them is going to become the king of Emberfall. And it didn't happen. They spent so long preparing for this battle just for them to call it off. Like, when I was predicting how this book was going to end, because remember, I said it was very predictable, I predicted that they would at least start the battle and then realise that they had to stop to fight Lilith. No, they didn't even get to the battle. They just stopped fighting way before the fighting even started. They were literally preparing to attack, and then there was like, right, we'll get him next week. Oh no, this is going on. So we're not going to have a battle now. We're just going to have to fight Lilith together now. So we didn't even get the drama, bloodthirsty moment that we was hoping for. It didn't even happen. The thing that we were building up for the entire book didn't happen. It just stopped. And what a waste of time that was. It was so frustrating. because I just feel as though you're building up. Things are starting to get tense. You're like, yeah, even if I could predict that they were going to stop fighting each other to battle Lilith, there would still be battle. People would probably still die. That is dramatic. Didn't happen. But remember, guys, like I said, these are just little things that bothered me, that really, really bothered me. But overall, I actually really enjoyed my read of this series. I gave them all 4 stars. I thought they were a lot of fun. So don't take anything I'm saying too seriously. These are just a few things that I had to talk about because they caused me so much anger whilst reading. But overall, it was not a negative experience. I'm not bashing the books. I actually really enjoyed them, so don't come for me in the comments. If you disagree with anything I've said, please feel free to let me know down below because I would love to have that discussion. But yeah, but no hatred, no horrible things like that. We're all about loving and sharing our discussions and opinions here. But yeah, like I said, just a enjoyable little fun discussion. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts because I know a lot of people absolutely adore this series. I understand why. I did just have a few issues that I've mentioned. Don't hate me. But that is it from me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you leave me a like and a comment and a subscribe. And I post videos now every Monday and Friday. So I will see you in my next video. Bye.